And we are live. What's going on YouTube Live? It's your boy, Billy Rowe. Today is Tuesday. And if it's Tuesday, you should already know what time it is. It's time for a first row Intersation. So tonight's topic will be Don't Panic with Sylvia London. If you could really quickly, Sylvia, say hello to the people.
Hey, everybody.
She meant to say, it's about to go down. That's what she meant to say. So tonight's topic, again, don't panic. I'm really looking forward to this topic because I've always told people that are close to me that I have a broken panic mechanism. So I'm really interested in talking about this topic. And I'm really interested in Sylvia sharing not only her insights, but some of her personal stories on how she's experienced life's crises or crises. I don't know how do you say that. Maybe it's crises. That sounds a little more correct. But I'm really excited about her sharing her story and sharing her insights with you. So without further ado tonight, hey, what's going on, Jay Taylor, Aaron G? We got a bunch of people in the building. Just bam, bam. That's what I'm talking about. A support network. It's about your tribe. It's about your tribe. But anyway, let's jump in it tonight. For those who are new to the Intersation concept, what Intersation is simply this. When you take an interview and a conversation and you put the two together, you get Intersation. So in my life, I'm very, very fortunate to have a robust network of friends, family, acquaintances, strangers, cousins, third cousins, and everything in between. And in those relationships, we typically have many conversations, but those conversations go beyond that surface level of, how was your day? How are you doing? What's new in life, to much more deep and meaningful things as far as like, what does that mean to you? Why do you think that way? How has that helped you grow as an individual? And so Intersations, what that is it's literally me opening up a literal lens into those conversations. So though tonight you will see Sylvia and I conversating back and forth visually, realize that this is a very open conversation. It's like a group discussion. You just happen to only be able to see two people in the group. So we experience all the transparency and the vulnerability, and you guys get to hide behind your persona on the chat. So happy you guys could join us. With that, let's jump into tonight's topic. Don't panic with Sylvia. Sylvia, before we get started, I do want you to take a little more time, other than just a hi, to introduce yourself, why you're on the first row, and what you feel you have to bring to this conversation.
All right. Well, first of all, Billy, thank you for having me. It is an honor to be here. Everyone that is joining on live, thank you for joining. I see some names I recognize, so I love you guys. Like Billy said, my name is Sylvia. I am happily married to the love of my life. We are celebrating 21 years together and 20 years married this year. And I'm a mom to some of my favorite humans. And as far as career-wise, I spent about 10 years in the corporate world before the economy tanked. And I lost my job along with many other Americans, which will be part of the story tonight. And now I'm somewhat in the medical field. However, if you were to ask me what my career is, at this point in time, both my husband and I, the season God has us in, is homeschooling our kids. I believe 100% that children are our future. I know those are lyrics to an amazing song, but it's also fact. One day our youth are going to run our world. So for me, one of my life's motto is there's no greater investment than in the life of our child. And so that is your children biologically, that's neighborhood kids, church kids, strangers. And so for us, we are homeschooling our babies and pouring into them, investing in them as if we would invest into 401k, retirement, etc. And we're almost done. We've graduated 2. We've got one more graduating next year, another one the year after, and then where God leads us after that, we shall see.
I like that. Definitely. Do you have the video up still, Sylvia? Or no?
Yes. Nope, it's up.
The video as far as what's playing live for the live audience.
Oh no, I X'd that out.
Okay, I just had a little bit of echo. Maybe it was me just coming in a little hot. Too excited about tonight. That's what it might be. So thank you for sharing all that. And you're right. I think there's a lot that we're going to get into as far as your background, your history in regards to Don't Panic. But I also thank you just for like being willing to make that investment. I wish that I had the courage, I would say, to make that type of investment, to say, hey, look, I'm just going to be able to work what I can work outside of the house and then really focus in on my 3 sons. I still focus in quite a bit on them as far as like manhood and raising them towards their own version of manhood. But being able to say, look, we're going to be graduating these kids through a system that we get to decide what the curriculum is to an extent. We get to decide what the foundation is, what the morals and the values are. I think that that's commendable. So my hat's off to you on that. But let's get into tonight's topic. So actually, before I get into tonight's topic, let me do something that I normally don't do. I want to tell people why I chose you and you chose me, because I offered and you accepted. Maybe you didn't know what you were getting into, but that's okay. There was actually a post that you put up, and it was a reflective post that you put up on social media about your journey, about losing things in life and not having, not knowing what was coming next in life, and to look back, reflecting on that years later, 10 years later, and saying, wow, all that worked out, and all the stress and all the concern and all the energy we may have poured into that moment. When you look back at that moment, it's like, wow, that seemed like it was the end of the world, and really it was nothing but a pause in the sentence. So that's what really, like, I was like, ooh, she'd be really wonderful to do a Don't Panic with, because I wanted to do something in regards to anxiety, panic, those types of things. And so somebody who's gone through something always has a great story to share with people. So that's what made me really want to choose you, to reach out to you on this topic. And I think you're more than qualified for it. So bear with us as we move through this, but I hope you guys are definitely ready to rock and roll. So with that, we're jumping straight into it. The first question is the same question for every single Intersation. What does the topic Don't Panic mean to you?
Well, panic by definition is a sudden uncontrollable fear or anxiety that often yields to wildly unthinkable behavior. And that's been, I feel like, the theme of our life for the last 10 years. We literally have dealt with job loss, car loss. My husband and I were near divorce during that time. And that's a whole nother Intersation. Thank you, Jesus. And and we've, lost things that we worked entirely hard for. We have had near-death experiences. I was in a car accident a couple of years ago and literally almost died. I was rushed into emergency surgery. So it feels like every time we hit a situation that we begin to panic and we overcome it, we are faced with another one. We're raising teenagers and young adults, and that brings a whole other array of panic and anxiety. And I feel like I'm a true believer in sharing your story. I feel like I would be selfish to not share my story. I feel like it would be robbing others of encouragement that they may need, or words of wisdom. We never know what other people are going through. And oftentimes I've shared my story and other people are going through something so similar. So actually there was a saying I saw the other day that said, your scars are someone else's hope. And that spoke volumes to me, because it's true. We shouldn't be afraid or ashamed of our scars or our stories, or, we had to be on public assistance. It is what it is. And so, yeah, that's, I don't feel like I'm, an expert in the field, but we've definitely lived through the experience. So I love to share, just to encourage others that you can get through it.
No, I agree with you. And in many ways, that is a lot of what this topic is for me. It's like, in short, we go through life, and behind life is life, and behind the next day is the next day. So long as you're here, there's another day to experience good. There's another day to experience bad. And in some ways, you don't know what that's going to be. You can be hopeful. You can be, what do they call it? Starts with an O. Oh my gosh. What's the word, Sylvia?
Optimistic.
Optimistic. Thank you. I was like, I know you know the word, because I know the word. You can be optimistic. You can be pessimistic. That doesn't really matter. Tomorrow, if you're here tomorrow, then it's another chance or another opportunity to play part or take part in this game called life. So when I think of Don't Panic, I think about how those situations, again, that we're in for the moment, and the moment of time is very fleeting. Even when you're in emergency surgery, that is a moment of time that is fleeting. Either it's going to be successful or it's not going to be successful, but that moment is fleeting. And so, I mean, even going back to, I had a dental appointment on my birthday last week, and there was like, my bottom jaw wasn't quite completely numb, but I was like, I'm tired of holding my mouth open, so let's get to it. And that moment, for me to get through that moment, is like, my jaw's not going to be, my teeth are not going to be being drilled on forever. So if I can just make it through this space and time, then after this space and time comes the recovery. After this space and time comes the healing. After this space and time comes the lesson. Floss your teeth better. So that's what it means to me. Don't panic. Don't get caught up in the emotions. And Jay Taylor, Mr. Swift here, says impulse, and don't get caught up in those reckless impulses. So I like that you brought in the jobs, the car, the divorce. Those are things that kind of, as life becomes tense, we kind of begin to start assessing things that have nothing to do with the tension that is actually taking place in life. So I'm glad you shared those. So I hope you enjoyed that easy question. I hope you got the bugs out. Let's jump into the meat and potatoes. So for you, when it comes to Don't Panic, why do you think we either become distracted or attached to things that are insignificant to the big picture when we're in these moments of panic?
I think it is human nature to immediately look down the road at everything that can go wrong. I think we lose focus on the situation at hand and possible solutions, and our mind just automatically goes to, oh my gosh, if I lose my house, we're going to end up on the streets, or if I lose my car, how are we going to get anywhere? And I know for me personally, when panic has struck, it's when I have taken my eyes off God. I would not have this story or this testimony without God. So I'm going to reference him a lot because he is my saving grace. And that is when panic sets in. When I take my eyes off of him, every single thing we've been through, though it seemed like I was like, where are you right now? Looking back, he 100% was there. He was carrying us. Not one need went unmet. So I know that I can trust in him. But as a human, our flesh may fail sometimes. And so I will take my eyes off of him, and he's taking too long. And so I need to figure out what to do in my own strength, right? Or you're not doing it the way I want you to, so I'm going to do it the way I want to. And thinking we can yield faster results. And oftentimes our faster results are not the best results for us. And so for me personally, I begin to panic when I take my eyes off of God. But I also think as humans, it's when we take ourselves out of the reality of the situation, what's happening in the moment, and we just focus in on everything that can go wrong.
Yeah, focus is critical to panic. Like, if you're distracted because you're so distracted, whether you say on the future or spiritually distracted, it's easy to like lose track of what's actually happening in the moment. And sometimes what that does is it causes us to inflate the situation to this grandiose situation. Like you said, now it's not just like, hey, we may have to move into an apartment because we're going to lose the house. It's, we're going to be homeless and have to live in our car because we lost our house. And so when you lose that focus, or you're kind of losing touch on the reality of the situation, it can cause you to make those future decisions, or those future hypotheticals become very real and very like, this is going to happen tomorrow. I got to worry about tomorrow, like, because of what's going on today. And you don't focus that time, that attention on the solution for what today is. So I like your answer there. For those who do utilize panic, some people use panic as a coping mechanism. Some people use it as a tool, like a motivator, like it's going to motivate me to do what I need to do. So some people will procrastinate to the last minute because they feel like they are more effective when they have a finite amount of time, like a sliver of time to do something versus a week of time to do something. What do you think people gain from panic after it passes? So not the panic, not the anxiety in the moment, but what do you think they gain from it after it passes? In your experience, what have you gained from panic after it has passed?
Well, definitely learning how to cope with it. I remember the first time I had like an anxiety attack. I felt like I was dying, literally. And I knew I never wanted to feel that way again. And I think I'll go a little more into detail later on what happened at that point. But so for me, it was recognizing anxiety and a panic attack when it's coming on, and learning how to work yourself back down. And as a matter of fact, Key Bryant, one of your guests that you've had on a few times, mentioned in one of your Intersations, never give up. Which, side note to everybody chatting, I encourage you to get pen and paper and take notes, because there's never been an Intersation that I have watched where I have not at least taken one note. And I'm able to share this tidbit because I went back to my notes to
Appreciate it,
so take notes. You could get wisdom from Billy, from myself, or from those chatting. And yes, those chatting inside, the chat. There's a lot of wisdom falling around. So take notes. But anyways, Key Bryant mentioned that panic can do two things. It can cripple us, and it can cause us to react too quickly, right? And I 100% have done that. I think we all have done that. We react without thinking, and so we make decisions in the moment, which I don't think any decision I've ever made in the moment, because you're not thinking it through, has ever yielded amazing results, ever. And so for me, when I feel panic coming on, first of all, like I said, I'm going to bring up God a lot. I get before God and I go to him. I turn on worship during this time. And even, as a matter of fact, I was playing this before tonight because my nerves are going crazy. Freedom reigns, worship. That's huge. And just calming yourself down, breathing, that is what it's done for me going through panic attacks, learning how to deal with it. And again, our panic attack is driven by fear. It's driven by us not focusing on what is happening in this moment. You know what I mean? When I went into my anxiety attack, I was thinking about us losing our home. And oh my gosh, what if we end up on the streets with our kids? Now, mind you, we have a very supportive family, so we would not have ended up on the streets. We have family that would have given us a roof over our heads, and ended up giving us a roof over our heads. However, in that moment of panic and anxiety, I'm thinking, we're going to end up on the streets. How is this going to damage my kids, et cetera, et cetera. And so, so I have definitely learned to woosah, if you will. And, yes, take it down, breathe slowly. Let's focus on what's here now. Let's look at the positive things. Like, what are we lost our car. Okay, that sounds horrible. It was horrible when we were walking 32 miles back and forth to walk the kids to school in heat. But we had healthy, strong legs to get us where we need to go. We had my parents, who, shout out to my mom and dad who are watching, love you guys, who let us borrow their car and eventually gave us their car fully paid off when they got another one. So, look at the positives instead of the negatives and everything that can go wrong.
Yeah. And, it's funny. I think one of the things that happens immediately when you're in a state of panic is your support network just becomes invisible. Like, you don't even think of who can, in the words of that famous song, who can I run to? You don't even think about those things. You just like, okay, there's a brick wall in front of me.
Yes.
And I got to run through that brick wall. Needless to say that the brick wall is only 4 foot wide and you can walk around it. You're just like, I have to go through that wall. So you're right. There's actually a couple questions here in the chat. The chat is moving so fast. I got to bring things into the conversation quickly. So Brian Sr. says, and this is a question to you, Can you experience anxiety and not panic? I guess the first question I would ask is, for you, is there a difference between anxiety and panic?
I think a little bit. Yeah, I think sometimes panic might just be like fear or like maybe a quick like, oh my gosh, moment. Whereas anxiety, for me at least, like literally, you are worked up. Like for me, I felt like I was going to have a heart attack. Like your heart is racing. You feel like you can't breathe. So for me personally, I feel like they are slightly different. So what was the question?
Okay, so you answered that. So the question is, I'm sorry, the chat moved again. Can you experience anxiety and not panic?
Oof. I don't know. I feel like in anxiety, for me, when I was having an anxiety attack, I was panicking. Like I literally, and again, I will probably elaborate a little bit later, but I was about to get my husband to take me to the hospital because I thought I was gonna die. Like I felt like I was having, so honestly, I feel like the anxiety brought on panic because I felt like I was going to have a heart attack.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that. I think that you can have anxiety, which will lead to panic probably every time. But I don't think that you can have panic that necessarily leads to anxiety. And the reason I think that is because I personally think that panic and anxiety are two different things. Panic is like, can be situational. And whereas anxiety is something that, from where I've seen people who have had anxiety attacks and have told me about them, I've never had one, but they've been like, I felt like I was having a heart attack. I couldn't catch my breath. I thought I was having an asthma attack. And all those things are what anxiety is causing to flare up. And then because of those symptoms, you're now panicking. Like, am I getting ready to die from an asthma attack? Am I checking my arm? Is my arm numb and tingling anywhere? Like, is this a stroke? Like, I'm doing stroke protocol. So you do all these different things, but I think that's anxiety leading to panic. However, panic is like, you can be in a situation where, I've been at the state fair where they've been shooting at the state fair. And you see the crowds of people running and scattering. That's not anxiety. That's panic. I'm trying to get myself out of this situation. So I think that you can have panic and not have anxiety, but I don't think that you can have anxiety and not have panic. I do think, though, that if you are good at controlling your panic or good at mitigating your anxiety, you can be on just the anxiety side and not slip into the panic because you recognize, kind of like you said at the beginning, hindsight, you now know how to recognize the symptoms. And so it's like, these symptoms are coming on. Let me try to get to a place where I can take some deep breaths. Let me put on some soothing music. Let me put on some worship. Let me get with God. Let me do all these different things that are going to bring the anxiety down before I go into full on panic. Because if I slip into panic with anxiety, it's going to be hard to get me back. So that was a great question, Brian. And then Jay, we actually agree. I think panic is a result of anxiety. Yes, I agree with you on that. Let's see what else we got here in the chat before we move on. It looks like Katina Walker says, I totally agree. I've had many panic attacks, and without God, I could not have gotten through it. Brian Sr. says, is not being impulsive a lesson learned let me start that over. Is not being impulsive a lesson learned to once panic is past? So I think he's saying, is that a lesson that you learn once panic is past, is to not be impulsive? Understanding that being intentional while is a panic. Cousin Brian, you challenging my reading comprehension today. Understanding that being intentional while is a panic is definitely difficult. Oh, okay. So he's basically saying, is not being impulsive a lesson learned once the panic has passed, or is that something that you can learn during the panic? What I think I know what you think, but go ahead and share what your thoughts are on that.
For me, I think it is something that you learn once it passes, because I think when we're in panic mode or anxiety mode, we're not thinking at all, really, realistically. So I think for me, it's once it's passed, I was able to, obviously think clearly.
Right. Yeah, logic kind of goes out the window when you're
Yeah.
panicking. Um, that's the fortunate thing about not having a panic reflex to an extent. Um, I stay kind of in a logical stream of, okay, so what are the steps to getting to the end of this? Because this again is just a moment in time that we're moving through, and once we move through it, there will be some things after it that are brighter, that are happier, that are less stressful. So I agree with you on there. Going down to catch us up the rest of the way. It looks like Aaron G said, "I needed this today, girl. She needed you today." um, Carolyn, hey, welcome, sis. Escape was my jam. Hey, all. Uh, then Carolyn, anxiety for me would build gradually, whereas panic can come on instantaneously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think it builds gradually, but there's a tipping point with anxiety to where it feels like it's instantaneous when you have an anxiety attack. So all these little anxieties that you've been holding on and storing in your anxiety bank, they get to the tipping point, and then the next little thing that says drop, boom. Now all that anxiety comes to the forefront. So I think it is something that's gradual, but it does have a tipping point. And then lastly, but not least, let's see. Agree with regulating anxiety can minimize panic. And oh, darn autocorrect. That's what's getting Brian is the autocorrect. So let's jump back into the questions. So we talked about a little bit about how we get distracted, what we gain from a panic attack or panic, the clarity that comes with that, and honestly, there's some challenges that come with that. Can we jump a little bit into your personal story about some of the challenges that arise from those moments of panic that you went through that you were sharing earlier?
So shortly after I lost my job. We were trying to remodify our home, which took 4 years, by the way. But that was a blessing in disguise because while our home was going through that process, we had no mortgage payments. So thank you, Jesus, for that. But right when we began the process, though, I remember laying in bed at night, just thinking of that process, and again, all of the what ifs and what can go wrong. And I began thinking about, my kids, and we had forged bonds with the kids in the neighborhood who have become like family, and we are still bonded to this day. But in that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, what if we never see them again? And, what if my kids lose that friendship? And, I was really big on stability for my kids, and we were supposed to be in this house, until I had grandkids. And how is that going to affect my babies, and how are they going to take this, with their future experiences? And of course, like, oh my gosh, we're going to end up on the streets, et cetera, et cetera. And so just my mind racing and doing all of that, I caused myself to go into an anxiety attack. And I remember getting up from the bed and going into the bathroom, and I was trying to calm myself down. And I remember just rocking like back and forth and just like praying, like, Jesus, please, God, I need you to take this away. Like that's all I remember saying. I just kept rocking back and forth, back and forth. And I remember my son, who was 5 or 6 at the time, came running into the bathroom screaming, and he had had a nightmare. And immediately my mind shifted from panic mode, anxiety, to I need to focus on my son. I need to take care of my son and comfort him. And I was literally about to get up and go tell my husband to take me to the ER because, like I said, I felt like I was going to die. And so in that moment, I realized I don't have time for an anxiety attack. Like,
ain't nobody got time for anxiety,
right? Like, my kids need their mom. My husband needs his wife. Like, I need to get it together. I need to shift my focus and stop worrying about what can go wrong and focus on, like, what do we have? We're still in our house. We, at the time we still had our car. We're all healthy. Like, praise Jesus. There are people that deal with so many health issues. We're all healthy. We still have food on the table, which God provided miracles many times. And so that for me is what shifted things. And at that moment I realized, like, okay, I've got kids who are watching how we respond to this situation. And we've always been very real with our kids. We've never wanted to sugarcoat things and make them think life is perfect and grand. So we've been very open with them in what we've experienced, but at the same time, we've always tried to focus on the positives instead of the negatives. So that was my wake-up call, what shifted me from the anxiety and panic to, okay, what can we do to get past this?
So it sounds like in this situation, number one, your kid coming in, your son coming in, being like, hey, look, I don't really care what you got going on, but Beyonce had the greatest album of all time. Like, had to basically come in and interrupt what you had going on.
Right.
But it flipped that switch for you to go, okay, I got to be the parent right now. I don't get to be the victim. I don't get to be the damsel in the distress. I don't get to be all these things that I want to be right now. Trust me, I want to be them, but I don't get to be them right now because the life that I brought into this world needs me. And that was part of the deal when I signed up. They need me, so I'm here and I'm present. So that worked out for your benefit. Hey, what's going on, Mark? Anthony, glad you could join us. So you've shared a little bit about the support roles, your parents, your husband. You shared about those support roles that have been positive. I think an area that sometimes can extend a panic attack or can extend the situations or circumstances surrounding the panic is sometimes that support that we have that is the negative support, the naysayers. You might have somebody, oh, you believing in God for a miracle, like you better get up off your butt, and you over here talking to the wall. The wall don't hear you and ain't gonna change the situation. You have all these different things, but I think there are some negative supports that not that they're supporting in the healthy manner, but that they can pull you back or keep you in a situation a little bit longer. Do you have any experiences? I mean, you don't have to share any names or anything like that, but do you have any experiences where you've had negative haters, supporters that were trying to get you to look at the panic of the moment instead of the positive in the future?
Oh, 100%. So I'm going to pause on the panic conversation really quick, and I'm going to go to an example that I have as far as, they say, and I tell my kids this all the time, show me your friends and I will show you your future. And that is a saying for a reason, because who you hang around, who you spend your most time around. I would love to say that I'm like a huge influencer, but we all have those people that can influence us the wrong way, especially if we're constantly around them. And so probably, 16 years ago, that made me feel old, but 16 years ago, I had a group of coworkers, right? And they were great girls. We got along great. We used to go to lunch all the time together, and we're all married. But they were very unhappily married. And so the majority of our lunch hour would be spent talking about their husbands, complaining, griping, whatever. And they used to tease me because I had nothing to say about my husband. Not that he was perfect, but we were fine. Like I had no complaints. And I also felt like, it was disrespectful for me to talk about him like that, right? However, hanging around them enough times and long enough, I eventually became that complaining wife. And so things that he did that never got on my nerves before they started driving me nuts. And that ended up causing a rift in our marriage. And I wish I could say that I recognized that in the moment, but it wasn't until looking back and seeing hindsight, like, wow, that really did have an effect on our marriage, you know what I'm saying? And what progressed afterwards. And so that has been a story that I tell everybody. Like, you need to watch who you hang around and who you talk to. You need to be choosy with who you are sharing your story with. I share my story now with everybody, no problem, because there was a victory in it. You know what I mean? We overcame it. So I'm sharing it as a testimony, but in the moment, you need to be choosy with who you're sharing it with, because you want to share it with people who have wisdom, who have been through that experience and successfully gotten out of that situation. You know what I mean? You don't want to be getting advice from someone who hasn't gotten out of the situation. There are people that will add fuel to the fire because they want that drama. There are people who don't want you to succeed, and those people may call themselves your best friend. So you do need to use wisdom and discernment in who you are associating with, who you are sharing your story with, and be mindful and pay attention, be aware when they start speaking negatively to you, or when you have this grand idea and they start kind of, switching their tone or down talking, whatever it is. That should be a warning, like signals going off, like, well, hold on, wait a minute, like maybe I shouldn't be talking to you about this. You know what I mean? Not that we need people who will keep us, in check and will,
hold us accountable.
Reality, right? But you don't want people that are going to add fuel to the fire. For me personally, in that situation, when we were losing our home and everything, I had learned by that point that I needed to be choosy with who I spoke to. And so I had people who were standing in the gap for me when I, was tired of praying, because there did get a point where I was like, if one more person tells me to pray about it, I'm gonna punch them in the face. You know what I mean? With love, with love, with love. But you know what I mean? Like, but you need those people who will stand in the gap for you and help you shift your focus on the positive and not the negative, et cetera, et cetera. So 100%, I have had the negative. It wasn't in regards to the panic aspect, but I absolutely have had that and learned, nope, I need to choose wisely who I circle myself with.
Okay. That does make sense though. And you're right. It's the people we surround ourselves, who you surround yourself with and who you listen to. Those two things will impact the crap out of your mind. Like your mind will be like, I used to think I had a pretty good dude. And now all of a sudden I'm just looking for what's wrong. I'm not even looking for what's right. And I call those people highlighters. They're not good highlighters. They're like the teacher who uses the red ink under all the mistakes that you make. And so now when you go back and you look at your paper, you don't see this work of art that you created and with some blemishes and flaws, you see all the flaws. So now everything you see that's red is like drawing your attention to it. So you do see that happen. And one other thing that you said about assessing your friends, the wrong time, or it's too late to assess your friends in the midst of the panic attack. Because now whatever support system you have is the support system you have, good, bad, flawed, ugly, whatever it may be. So I always will encourage people, evaluate your friends regularly. Don't evaluate your friends in the time of crisis. Don't evaluate your friends simply because you don't agree with them. There's friends that I have that we don't see eye to eye on everything. However, we are very accountable to each other. We can tell each other, shoot each other straight and be like, hey, at the end of the day, I know that this person loves me and is looking out for my best interest, whether we agree or not. So you're very much right on that. I was going to ask another question, but there was one other thing that you said about being happily married and not wanting to engage with people. It's almost like not being a smoker and going and sitting at the smoking section of the building where you work at. You cannot be a smoker, however, you are around smoke. And so some of the harmful consequences of smoking, you will be exposed to those whether you ever put a cigarette to your mouth. And so it doesn't surprise me to be in a circle of women who are, talking bad or talking down or about their husband. That overall in influencing you to start looking at, well, what does my husband, they're saying it can't be perfect. So what does my husband do that does get on my nerves? He picks his teeth with his fingernails. That gets on my nerves. Like, he doesn't take the trash out on Wednesday. He takes it out on Thursday. That gets on my nerves. So you'll have this list of things that get on your nerves that may have actually gotten on your nerves, but you just overlook it because of the love, the grace that love gives. But because you stop operating in that grace and you stop functioning through that lens of love, now you're functioning through the lens of contentment and irritation and frustration. So I think that's a very good add to the conversation. The last thing I'll add to that is if you don't want to be a person who's overly panicky, then maybe you should evaluate if your friends are overly panicky, because that is where that mentality, if you're not a panicky person, can kind of seep into your life, because you're taking on stressors that are not even yours to take on. It's just a friend's stressors that they're kind of handing you and feeding you, and you're just absorbing them. And so then that's when you get to this point of anxiety. We're going to call it the critical mass of anxiety, to where now you get one little thing of anxiety in your life and you don't have the bandwidth to handle it. Let's jump into the next question, because you did talk a little bit about how to interrupt the panic process. You talked about praise and worship, talking about talking to God. What else did you talk about? Recognizing the signs, and then trying to keep yourself out of the crippling reaction. What other tools have you utilized when it comes to, even if you're in the panic process, breaking that process, kind of like how your son broke the process for you getting ready to go into panic, but breaking that process to be able to get back on track into a healthy mind state, to be able to come up with solutions for what the true issue is?
Right. So again, I always go back to God. I pray, I put on worship. There are memory verses that have got me through, and so I will shift back to those verses. I will focus on what we've gone through and what God has brought us through, and remind myself that He's got us, and so we're good. My circumstance may not look good right now, but we will be all right. And again, like in the moment, if I feel that anxiety going on, worship is almost my number one. That just calms me. But again, just focusing on the positives, the right now. Okay. So I lost my job.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that I'm never going to find a job again. That doesn't mean that I have to lose my house. I have to lose. That is something that we went through. And at this point, I'm thankful that we went through that, because we have this story, because we're able to share it with others and be encouraging to others. However, that doesn't mean that happens every single time. It doesn't mean that you're going to end up on the streets. So don't focus on all of the what ifs. Focus on, okay, what is my situation right now? And what can I do to change the situation? And then again, as far as like just calm breathing, calm yourself down, just loose off.
It's funny, because I've been laid off before, and I remember when I was laid off, people were asking me, what are you going to do? Oh my gosh, I don't know what I would do if I was in that situation. Oh, what are you going to do? Like, oh, how are you going to support your family? And I just remember telling people, like, well, I'm too young to retire, so I'm going to go back to work somewhere and make money, and either continue to pay these bills or pay the bills that are available to pay when I get back to work. Like, you can call me as a debt collector. If I ain't got it, I ain't got it. I'm not going to stress, oh, these debt collectors are calling me. I don't have it. So I'm not going to squeeze it out of my skin. So sorry. Thanks for calling. Phone might not be connected next week, because that's the next thing that's getting ready to get disconnected.
Right.
So no, I definitely can get with that. One of the things I want to touch base with you on, because of the story you shared about your son breaking your anxiety. Does panic affect us differently when it's only impacting us, as opposed to when it's going to impact us and others around us?
I feel like it does 100%, because if my son had not come through that door, like I said, I was literally about to get up and tell my husband, take me to the ER, because I'm going to die. That's how I felt. And so, yes, I feel like if it was not for my kids, I would have absolutely allowed myself to go full-fledged into anxiety. And there's been even times where, this is going to sound silly, but I have an extreme fear of elevators, like for real. I have been stuck in elevators multiple times, so I have good reason. But there was one time where, our kids pay attention to what we're doing. They pay attention to what we say. They pay attention to our actions more than our words. And so I tried overcoming that fear, right? because I didn't want them to pick up on that fear. I didn't want them to have a fear of elevators because mom has a fear of elevators. So I would force myself to go on these stinking elevators when they were younger. And there was a time when we got stuck in a doggone elevator with our kids, and it literally was stuck mid-floor and the door was opening. And so, of course, my anxiety is like wanting to go crazy, but I knew that I had my kids with me right there. So I had to focus on breathing. I had to calm myself down because I did not want them to freak out. If mom freaks out, they're freaking out. You know what I mean? And so we got through that. I don't like taking elevators still. And now that they're all old to form their own opinions, I don't take the elevators. I will walk 14 flights. But nonetheless, yes, to answer, I will. But to answer your question, 100% for myself, if I feel like it's going to impact someone else, there's a person I work with at one of my jobs, and he is very sensitive to anxiety. He has very bad anxiety attacks. So he will pick up on your anxiety and go into an anxiety attack. So knowing that, if I feel like I'm panicking, I will calm myself down because I know that it will affect him probably even greater. So yeah, if it was just me, I'd be a hot mess. I am a hot mess, but you're hot.
No, I definitely get that where, you know, I agree with you and I get it where if something just impacts you, you feel like, okay, it's just me. I'm only burning my own ship up or crashing my own plane. That's just me. It's only me being impacted by that. But when you do start thinking about your children and your spouse and your family and your friends and your coworkers and like all these other people that might come along with you for the ride, then you start thinking, okay, I need to calm myself down. It's funny because I don't have issues with panic, but I do have issues with anger. Like I can go from 0 to like 1,000,000 in a flash, like dropping water in a skillet with some hot oil in it. Pop, I'm gone. So for me, I've had to have those moments to where though it is just me, I have to think about the people that my decisions will impact indirectly or directly. And I remember actually being in Vegas one time, and my wife and I at the time were in the store, and we were shopping for clothes because she had bought a dress. And don't take this as the wrong way, but I'm not a controlling person at all. But I was like, that dress that you're in, I'm feeling the dress, but it's going to get me in a fight tonight. So we need to go and buy you a whole new wardrobe right now. And while we're in the store shopping for this wardrobe, two gentlemen, I'm going to use that term loosely, but gentlemen walk past the store, see my wife, and come into the store. Now, this is a female clothing store. There's only one other guy is in there, me and another guy shopping with his girl. And so they came back, and this guy comes with his camera, and he's like trying to take a picture. And I'm standing there looking at him. I'm like, are you about to take a picture of my wife? And he, in his ignorance, says yes. And me, in my flashpoint, wanted to punch the phone through his face. But I did not. And the reason I didn't was because I heard my mother's voice right before I had left to Vegas. Hey, have fun, be safe, stay out of trouble. And I just heard that stay out of trouble. And it was like, shoot, if I punch this phone through your face, which I believe I'm capable of doing, I'm going to go to jail. And I'm going to have to sit there for the rest of this 3-day weekend and then have to hope that I can get out to get back to not lose my job in California. So there are those things where if it was just me and, hey, I got a job that's understanding and all these different things are not going to be impacted, maybe I make a different decision in that situation. But because I start thinking about all the other things that are around and all the other things that need me to be out of jail versus in jail, now it's like, okay, I have to make the right decision. And I think panic can play that way when you have people that are surrounded or going to be impacted by you. Or impacted by your panic. The next question I want to ask, because you said something earlier that what you had already made it through was the uh, foundation in which you perceived that you would make it through what you were currently going through. Were there ever any times in your life where things didn't get better?
In my life,
Hmm.
uh, I'm going to say no, Billy, to be honest with you, because I think it all depends on who you are as a person and what you think get better means. You know what I'm saying? So for me personally, I tend to be a very optimistic person, annoyingly so, I've been told. But we, like right now, we don't own our home anymore, right? We are renting a home. So to some people, that may not be better. To some people, that may look like, oh, you're not as successful. But to me, a roof over my head is a roof over my head.
Right.
So we're better. You know what I mean? We don't have the brand new car that we had with all the, bling bling going on and everything else, but we have a car and it's paid off and we're doing, you know what I mean? Like we have transportation. So I think it just depends on the way that you look at life, like even when we lost our home, we did end up, we stayed with my parents for a little bit, but they moved because they were tired and they're blessed like that, but they moved. And so we did have to stay in a hotel for a little bit. Some people may look at that as things just went downhill. But for us, again, a roof over our head is a roof over our head. So thank you, Jesus, that we have this hotel. Thank you that we have the means to pay for the hotel while we are trying to find a place. Thank you that there's this microwave inside the hotel that we can heat up TV dinners, because that was life for like a month. You know what I mean? So for me, no, I'm sure that in the moment it felt like it wasn't getting better. But like, for example, when I got into the accident, we kept hitting like car repair after car repair after car repair. And I was like, God, seriously, like, our finances, like, can you just wave your hand and like fix everything that's going on with this car? You know what I mean? So in the moment, it felt like things were never going to get better at that time. You know what I'm saying? But moving forward, they have gotten better. We're all still here. We're still healthy. We have income coming in. Just my husband was in an accident in October. It put him out of work. So we lost two sources of income at that point. Again, I say, people could look at that as things aren't better. You know what I mean? I lost my corporate job. That was my career job. I was supposed to retire from there with 401k and everything else. People could think things haven't gotten better. But hey, you know what? My husband lost the two sources of income. However, he's alive. He's here. He's healthy. We're still paying our bills. We still have food on the table. No, I don't have my corporate job anymore. But you know what it did? It opened up the doors for me to spend more time with my babies. It opened up the door for me to homeschool them and to invest in them. And I'd rather invest in them at this point than a retirement or my career. I will be 41 when my baby graduates. So I was still young enough to build a career. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
for me personally, I feel like life is great.
Right. And I think therein lies the trick. And the question is, do things get better? Is really, it's a matter of your perspective. Um, Sometimes your perspective needs to bend and not the situation. We are, oh, you got to own a home and you got to do this and you got to do that. And you got to, this is what success looks like and all those things. And sometimes your perspective has to bend, and it's not bend in the sense of like settling for less than what you can go and get, but it's really it's a bending in understanding what is your priority and what is important to you. And if the answer is it's important that my family has a roof over their head, not so much that I own the roof, um, that allows you to see that things have gotten better. And one of the things you also said in the beginning, as far as like not having a mortgage at the time when you lost your job because of what you were working on doing, I forget what that term is called. What is it called again?
Remodification.
Loan remodification. That definitely makes a difference. And where things could have got worse real quick, because like after 3 months they're gonna come a knocking to take that house. So it being in that position where, hey, we were already working on something to better our situation, and actually we didn't know we were working on it to better our situation like this. So I definitely agree with you. It's a matter of that perspective where somebody may think, oh, because I own a home, things got worse. Some people think because I moved to Utah and I live in an apartment now versus the home I own, that, oh man, you downgraded. No, no. Well, I mean, it's only me in this house, so why do I need a 4-bedroom house? That would be me trying to meet the needs or the perspective of somebody else of what they think success is. But for what I think success is, I feel pretty darn successful. So I can live with what I have and I can live with what I don't have. I think the challenge and maybe you can share some insights on this, how do you overcome that challenge of people looking at your situation and judging it based on their situation or whatever it may be? How do you overcome that pressure, that peer pressure to want to go out and buy the bling bling again, the car, to go and get a house like that you can't afford? Like, how do you keep from going into that?
So, for me, like honestly, when we first lost everything, my mindset was, I'm never buying a house again. I'm never buying a car. Like we're never going to be in that position again, ever. You know what I mean? So I was lightweight bitter. You know what I mean? I feel like in the beginning. So I was never going to put ourselves in that situation again. I've gotten over that now. We are working towards buying a home again, et cetera, et cetera. However, I will say in homeschooling our kids, we have had to, we work multiple jobs and they're not necessarily what you would call career jobs. We were at one point for 5 years, we delivered newspapers and people looked at us sideways, like they looked down on us, like that's what you do. Yeah, that is what I do because it allows me to be more involved in my kids' lives. You know what I'm saying? And it did bother me at first because I felt like, I did feel like I wasn't measuring up, so to speak, to what people expected of me at my age, et cetera, or comparing us to when we had our home and our car and our timeshare and all this other stuff. So it was more so looking at, okay, but what is my priority? What is my goal and focus right now? It's not to own those things. It's not, you know what I mean? And honestly, a lot of the people that I know who have all that stuff are in debt and struggling. So it's like, it's not always what it's blown up to be. And so it was something I had to get over. It was more so just realizing what's important to me is not what's important to them, and that's okay. And I remember even with us doing the newspapers, our schedule, we weren't able to be at every single family event. And for me, as like, I'm very family oriented. So that did bother me a little bit. And so I would try to like, oh, I don't need to sleep tonight because I want to be here to support, you know what I mean? Well, we did that once and my husband almost got into an accident falling asleep. Like, it's not worth it, you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, those that truly love you, truly support you, they're going to get it. They're going to understand. I have another half of the family who we all have crazy schedules in our family, and they would work events around every single one of our schedules to make sure that we all, meaning like me, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, cousins, could be there. You know what I mean? So it's just, you have to look at the fact that what you deem successful isn't going to be what everyone else deems successful, and it's what you deem successful that truly matters. And to hit back on the point as far as, what were we just talking about, as far as does everything always get better? I will say this, your attitude does 100% shape that. And also your motivation, because I know people who they hate their situation, they whine and complain about their situation all the time, but they are not doing anything to change it. So at that point, it's not going to get better. In some cases, it's gotten worse. So it all depends on who you are as a person and how you're doing things.
No, those are two keys. I'm glad you brought those to the table: attitude and motivation. Because you can wish things away all you want, but until you do something to make that wish come true, good luck.
Right.
let's catch up in the chat really quick. We're getting ready to wrap shortly, but let's catch up into the chat really quick. It looks like Terrelyn agrees. Yes, appreciating the little things. That's important. Trina London says, yes, it's all about how you perceive it. Sunny's girl. I read that right. Sunny's girl, I'm so very proud of you. You are amazing. I told you this was going to be a fire conversation. Thought I was playing. Carolyn says, glass half empty or full. It's all in what one sees. Mark Anthony says, great points. Think big picture and long term. Losing a job is short term. You can bounce back. Just keep pushing. Carolyn, you must define success for yourself and not let other opinions impact your financial decisions. Also, she says that part, most things these days aren't what they appear to be. Ooh, I just got a call on that today about some, people want to act like they have their life together. And then when life really wants to dime you out, we'll all see inevitably how much it's not together. Mm-hmm. And Brian Sr. at Carolyn, yep, can't keep up with the Joneses nor the expectations of others. Nope. That what I want, before I ask you this next question, I want for those who are watching via the live chat or in the live on the chat at this point, if there is one takeaway that you're taking away from tonight that maybe you would share with somebody tomorrow when you're talking about the Intersation on First Row with Sylvia London on Don't Panic, what would that one takeaway be for you to type that into the chat so we can go over those before we wrap tonight? But for you, the second to last question that I want to ask you is, how do we create a space for patience during panic? Because I think that patience is the counter to panic. Like panic is the, I want, everything has to be done now. And patience is the, hey, everything can be done at its allocated time. How do you create that patience in that moment of panic, in that time where you feel like the sky is falling and everything that is falling from the sky is hitting you specifically in the head? How do you create that shelter, that patience, that mindset that helps you get through that?
Again, it's just focusing on the now, the moment. During that season, I went to Celebrate Recovery, which is like a 12-step, but biblically based. Mm-hmm. And we learned how to be in the now, be in the moment right now. And you had actually mentioned in one of your Wednesday words, matching energy. And you had talked about how you hate the word react because it's basically acting without a plan or failure to plan. And that doesn't set anyone up for success when we fail to plan. So when we're reacting to the moment, that's exactly what we're doing. We are immediately, oh my gosh, this happened. What can I do right now to fix it? And like I said before, and never once is, I have gotten jobs like right now because it was on Craigslist and I could get it and we needed money. And it was the worst thing in the world and it put us even, in an even worse situation. So it's really just being in the moment, being right now, just deep breaths. Don't make a decision when you're in that moment of panic. Don't make any decisions. Wait, give it a couple of days, because again, you are more likely going to make irrational decisions if you are doing it right then. So, and like I said, again, I'm always going to go back to God, scriptures, worship. Like that is my number one go-to. And then, have those people who are going to keep you grounded. There have been times like when my husband was in the accident and we were going yet again. Like I said, these 10 years, we have literally lost so much income. It's not even funny, but yet again, like I was like, oh gosh, Christmas is coming up. How are we going to do this? Blah, blah, blah. And my husband was like, babe, we're good. God's got it. Like, look at all the things that he's gotten us through before. We're good. So it's like, you need those people that are going to keep you grounded as well and bounce you back when you are losing balance.
Man, I feel like I should have asked my other question first, because you gave some great tips right there. So So far in the chat, in the live chat, we got the first takeaway being attitude and motivation for Brian Sr. If we get more, I'll read those as we go. But my last question to you is the same one I end every Intersation with, is if there are 2 or 3 takeaways that the people who are watching live tonight, you would want them to take with them from this conversation on Don't Panic, what would those be?
Probably everything I just said.
That's what I
said. So prayer. If you believe in God, if you pray, prayer, number one, whatever it is that you have on your shoulders, lay it at his feet. There is such freedom in just surrendering to God. Scriptures, memory, or worship, your circle. Make sure that you have people in your circle that are not going to bring you down, who are not going to add fuel to the fire and stir you up and work you up. I've had people who, when I've said, this is what I'm going to do, they panic and they're like, oh my gosh, how are you going to do that? You guys aren't going to be okay. And you don't need that. Like, you need people who are going to be like, okay, you got this. Again, you want people to keep you grounded, but you don't want people that are going to freak out when you're freaking out. So use discernment with who your circle is. I cannot stress that enough. Don't focus on down the road and all of the what ifs and the worst case scenarios. Don't focus on those. Focus on what is here in the moment and what steps do I need to take to change this situation. And like I said, don't make that decision in the moment. Take a few days, step away from the situation. I mean, there were times where literally, this is gonna sound silly, but I would pretend like I had, things were fine and I wasn't unemployed and hey, life is good. Like, I mentally had to put myself there at times to combat the negative thoughts that were flying at me. So be mindful of your situation. Don't give up. You can't, even if God is telling you to do something, God is not just gonna wave his hand. He's gonna expect you to also do your part and make moves as well. So that doesn't mean we were not just sitting back on the couch like twiddling our thumbs waiting for God to move mountains. We were also taking steps to make changes. So yeah.
All right. No, that's funny that you say that, because a lot of people, again, that wish mentality. It's like, okay, well, you could wish that God would come and open your ceiling and drop you a bag of money, but he might tell you to open the newspaper and find something that you need to be doing today. That's a one-day job to get you the money you need just to simply feed you for the day. So you're right. It's not about sitting back and hoping that the I call it the genie God, you just rub on the lamp and then your wishes start coming true. No, it's about being open, I think, and attentive to the opportunities that are out there. But I also like the fact that you said in the other one, wait, don't make any irrational decisions. So with that, I'm going to bring in what Mark Anthony says. He says, I learned to take a step back and calm down in stressful situations. Remember that you can overcome whatever it is that's bothering you. Life will always move on. Trina London, God can open doors no man can open, and close doors no man can close. That is true. I believe that too. So I want to thank you, Sylvia, for taking the time to be on tonight with me for the Intersation. This is long overdue, so I'm glad you went from viewer to participant and contributor tonight. But we definitely got to do this again. It's been a pleasure. We'll have to figure out another topic to jump in on, and we'll have you back on. Wish you could be on this Thursday, but maybe the next time. That's all right. It's all right. We'll get you back on something else. And we'll actually have to have you. I love your insights. So we'll have to have you on one of our panels for the Intersation panels. So I just, again, want to thank you again. As I say, hats off to you for coming and being transparent, authentic, and just speaking your truth and your tools. And for those who needed it, hopefully they got what they needed. And for those who maybe didn't resonate with them, that's okay. Life doesn't always have to resonate with us. And then lastly, Trina London says, you did great, sis. Love you. So that's always good to have that family support. So what I always end the first row intersations with, I have this thing called tools for the first row. So the name first row comes from a lesson that I was taught very early in business, that the people who sit on the first row, they make the most money and they get the most information. And that is because there is no distraction between them and the person giving them the information. So that is where the first row title came from. First row, it's a play on my last name, WROE, row. But it's that first row mentality. So you guys have been on the first row tonight. I want to give you guys a couple of the tools that I thought about when thinking about the topic of don't panic that I've used to keep myself calm and move through situations that would typically cause panic. So I'm going to go over these really, really briefly. The first tool, is know your panic triggers. And so I put these in 3 different categories. The first one being situational uncertainty. So situational uncertainty would be something like a medical test result. Well, if we get a medical test and we're waiting for those results to come back, it can cause anxiety and it can cause us to panic. Well, what if it comes back negative? What if it comes back cancerous? What if it comes back this? What if it comes back that? It can cause you to panic. So if you understand that that is one of your panic triggers, it's you have to be able to put yourself, or I recommend you put yourself in a mind state to understand that there's going to be some uncertainty in the situation that you're going into, and give that uncertainty the time that it needs to progress before you click into panic mode. The second area would be abrupt spike, and that causes a need for reaction. So for me, what that would be is like a situation, let's say a car stops suddenly in front of you. If you panic, you're more than likely going to hit the car because you're not going to kick into the reactions that you need to avoid the collision. This is one of the reasons why while I drive, going back to what you said about planning, while I drive, especially on the freeway, I'm always taking glances at what are my outs. Can I go right or can I go left if I absolutely need to? So that is the second one, is abrupt spikes. And I've actually had where we're getting on the freeway where a car has stopped. And this is when I was a young driver. Like, I think I was maybe a year and a half into driving. The car stopped dead in its tracks. And I looked down and looked up and it was stopped. And somehow I feel like I teleported through the car, but I know I didn't. I swerved around the car and got on the freeway. And it was because I didn't take that moment to say, oh my gosh, it's getting ready to happen. I'm going to hit. I'm panicking and I'm not moving the steering wheel while I'm panicking. So there's going to be abrupt spikes that cause a need for action. If you plan accordingly, or at least you're aware of your surroundings, you might be able to make the adjustments to avoid that panic. And then the third one is indecisive solution selection. We see this in the drive-through all the time. When you get to the drive-through, like, what would you like to order? And hold on, what would you like to order? And so we'll sit there and we're like, I want now obviously it's something that's more complex in the drive-through. Most people don't panic in the drive-through because they don't know what they want to eat. But there's going to be some situations in life where we have a plethora of solutions that are offered to us or that we can take, and we're not certain which one it is. And that stress alone can cause us to panic. Oh my God, if I pick this one, now we're caught in the future trap. If I pick this one, then it's going to land here. If I pick that one, it's going to land here. If I pick that one, it's going to land here. How about we just pick like 3 to 5 of the best ones that we think are the best ones, and we see how they apply to today. And if we can see how they apply to today, whether or not they're right or wrong, we'll find that out over time. But we can apply it today. So that's the very first tool. And I know it's kind of lengthy, but the first tool is know your panic triggers. Once you understand your panic triggers, you're in a better position to not panic. The second tool that I came up with, and I put this in the sense of swim with the current. Now, I'm normally telling people, don't just sit at the bottom of the current and wait for what the current brings to you, the scraps of the current. This is different. This is if you're in a river and the river is moving, you're not going to be able to swim back up that river. So swim with the current to get to where you want to go, whether that's to the shore or whatever it may be. Swim with the current. So I had a while back where my son was coming from school on his bike. His bike got hit by a car, and I'm at work. I get a call. Elijah's been hit by a car. That was the gist of the information that was given to me. I had to immediately close my laptop. I didn't shut down anything. Close my laptop, and I'm gone. I called my boss from the road, like, hey, I'm not gonna be here. I gotta go. My son got hit by a car, and so I'm rushing to the hospital. However, I'm rushing to the hospital safely. And the reason I say this is because I'm constantly telling myself while I'm driving, drive with a sense of urgency. Drive with a sense of urgency, but don't be reckless. Drive with a sense of urgency, but don't be reckless. And so I'm swimming with the current of, I got to get to where my son's at to find out what's happening. However, I'm not trying to swim uphill like, oh, now I got to go here. Now I got to go around here. Now I'm swerving. Okay, I'm going to get off this exit, jump back on. I'm not doing all that. I'm driving with a sense of urgency, and I'm moving in the areas that I actually can control. And that's really what swimming with the current is. Control what you can control, and that will keep you less stressed, less anxious about the panic that's around you, because it's a panic situation when you hear your kid's been hit and you don't know the outcome. However, the uncontrollable is the current. You can't turn around and swim up the current to get back to the beginning, or I can't turn around and teleport to the hospital to be there when he arrives. So that's the second tool, is swimming with the current. And at the very worst, if you can't swim with the current, swim across the current. They'll tell you that in any river safety course. Don't try to swim back up. You'll exhaust yourself and you'll drown. But if you're trying to get to the shore and you want to get back upstream somewhere, you're going to have to swim across the current, get to land, and walk back up to get in wherever you want to get at upstream. So that's the second tool is swim with the current and or swim across the current. The third tool is quit living like crisis is not going to show up in life. I think a lot of our lack of planning comes because we just assume it's never going to happen to us. I've been in some pretty crappy situations that I'm just like, okay, I got to deal with this because it's my situation to deal with. But I never told myself that this wouldn't be me. Even when I did tell myself that conversation of it wouldn't be me, and then it ended up being me, I had to reconcile, like, dang, I just made a hell of a bad decision. And now it's me. So we got to quit acting like our lives are immune to crisis. They're not. There's going to be situations that come up, whether it's layoff, whether it's loss of a loved one, whether it's illness. Might hit the lottery. They say people who hit the lottery are broke within 5 years after hitting the lottery, and their situation is worse than before they hit the lottery. Just saying. So just understand that life is going to show up for all of us because we are all living life. Les Brown says, bills ain't paid, lights gone out, car broke down, all those things. Yeah, that sound really bad, but guess what they call that? They call that life. So that's one of the things. And then I actually was listening to this audiobook, and it was shared today by Key Bryant from Keeping It Real Estate on the first row. It was an audible book called Chop Wood, Carry Water. And the thing in there, one of the parts of the book, it says you sink to your level of training when pressure or crisis arises. So it's not like, oh, well, I hope I get through this, or, I'm just going to barrel through it. It's like, no, when that pressure comes up, when that crisis comes up, however you've prepared yourself mentally for this type of adversity is the level you're going to sink to. So you're not going to excel beyond your wisdom and, oh, I figured that out miraculously. No, you're going to fall to the level that you're trained at, and then you're going to start growing from that level. So that's the what are we at? The third tool, quit living like life is not like crisis is not going to show up in life. And then the fourth one is it's not always about what it feels like. Panic gets us caught in a whirlwind of our emotions, our feelings, our fears. And so just realize that our emotions can sometimes betray us. And it's not like they're evil or anything like that, but they can betray us. They can make us see things larger in life, larger than they are in life. So going back to Sylvia, when you shared about, we're losing our house. And now because of the emotional state that I'm in, my emotions are telling me that I'm going to be homeless and my family's going to live under a bridge and we're going to carry all of our belongings in a shopping cart, where really this just means we no longer own the roof that we live under. And we're going to go through this season of renting and staying in a hotel, but at all those seasons we still have shelter. So that's why I say it's not always what it feels like. Don't allow panic to cause you to make feeling-based, emotion-based choices. Help yourself get back to the logic so that you can make logical choices. Hey, we're losing the house, so we got to find some place to live, not we got to be homeless. And then the last tool, and this actually kind of came during the Intersation that I thought was important to reiterate, is use previous successes as an indication that everything can and more than likely will work out. Um, as I said before, I've been laid off. I've had a job. I've not had a job. I've had money. I've not had money. But one of the things that I've always known is that I'm a giver. I sow like relentlessly into people's lives, whether that's intellectually, financially, if they need it, whatever it is, I'm willing to pour into people's lives. And so, whenever I have not had a job, whenever I have not had a car, whenever I have not had a specific resource, um, I've never felt like I've not had it. And so really I use that to say in those moments when you're going without, understand that it's just a temporary set of circumstances. It could have been like forever. I could have went without a car, and then they create a technology called Lyft and Uber. And now I could just call and have somebody who has a car pick me up and take me where I need to go. So those are the 5 tools that I came up with tonight that I wanted to share with you. I'll go over them really briefly again. Number 1 is know your panic triggers. Number 2 is swim with the current. Number 3 is quit living like crisis is not going to show up. Number 4 is it's not always about what it feels like. And number 5 is use previous successes as an indication that everything can and or will more than likely work out. So that's all I got for you guys tonight. I've enjoyed this Intersation. It has been fire. I really am glad you guys were able to tune in with us live. I do want to let you guys know the next live content that will be coming up on the first row will be tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is the Wednesday word. And the topic will be on which vehicle should you use. So it's funny, we were talking about cars, now we're talking about vehicles. And then there will actually be this week a special Intersation panel on Thursday, which I really wish Sylvia could be a part of, but she cannot. But that's okay. We're going to get you on one, like I said. That'll be Thursday, April 11th, and that will be at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That panel is actually on interracial marriage and relationships. Part 2. We actually did one at the end of last month that people were just like, I wanted to keep talking. Okay, so we're going to keep talking. So you guys tune in live for that one as well. Other than that, I really am just, again, Sylvia, I'm so proud of you just to sit here, just growing up as kids. Look at you all grown, girl. Just to see you share your story and to hear the grit that it took and the resilience that it took to get back to where you are today. And I'm sure you'll be well beyond where you were 10 years ago. But I'm proud of you, and I'm just really happy to consider you a friend and that you're a supporter of First Row. I love it. So I want to thank you again for being on tonight. For those who are watching on the live and have participated in the chat, as Bruce said, this chat is fire. The live is fire. I appreciate you guys for rocking with us tonight. If you're watching via the replay, please don't be afraid or too scared to drop us a comment in the comments. We do engage with those who are on the comments up to a week after the content has been produced. So I'm happy to engage with you guys from that perspective as well. So other than that, for those who know the key sign off on the first row, if you like this video, share it. If you share it, like it. We're happy to engage with you up to the first week in the comments of this video being released, which will be today. But other than that, I thank you guys for sitting on the first row. We look forward to seeing you next time. One love, peace, and God bless.